Good morning. It's the last day of September, and I'm just getting around to doing a video. It's been a busy month. My problems with my hand and my arm are still persisting. I expect they will. It's a nerve damage takes a while to heal, and so I'm trying to give it a rest. So I thought I'd talk a little bit today about this beautiful old Washburn guitar. Do a guitar of the month. So this guitar, as I said, is a Washburn. That's a little that's more of a brand name. The company was Lyon and Healy. Lyon and Healy traces themselves back to originally to Boston with the Oliver Ditson Company. Apparently Lyon and Healy, these two guys formed a partnership, went out to Chicago and were the Chicago reps for the Oliver Ditson Publishing Company. They apparently were quite the entrepreneurial pair, and they started expanding into instrument manufacturers. And by 1880, they sort of severed their ties with Oliver Ditson and became the Lyon and Healy Company. And they started releasing guitars under the Washburn name. Washburn is the middle name of, I believe it's Lyon. I think it's G.W. Lyon. And it's George Washburn Lyon. And so you see on the inside of this guitar, if you could see inside the guitar, I'm going to take a peek here, and I'm going to read some of the stuff that appears in here. It says it's an 1897 style. I've done a little internet sleuthing and seen that was a set of guitars. They changed up their model line in 1897, and so they proclaimed it an 1897 style. I think the 1890s was a rip-roaring time in the U.S., and so they were trying to capture the ethos, I think, of the moment, and so everything was new and lots of manufacturing springing up. So 1897 style. I'm doing a lot of interpretive dancing there, as far as, trying to assume what was going on in the time without actually doing any darn research. So it's just an opinion, folks. Some of this stuff will be factual. This is also the new model, as it's in here, and then it says George Washburn, and that's the brand, I guess. It's sort of like the Gibson Company puts out Epiphones now. They've amalgamated things. You got Squier guitars from Fender. It's that sort of thing. This was a Washburn from Lyon and Healy, who still persist in making harps, although the connection between that name, the Lyon and Healy, is pretty tenuous back to the original company. So what was I going to read here on the label? It's kind of fun. It says that the material, workmanship of this Washburn instrument fully guaranteed for the term of 1 year from the date of original purchase, provided the label is not mutilated. And since 1897, that label has not been mutilated. So, and the guitar survives. So that's the Lyon and Healy and the Washburn side of things. Now a little bit about the guitar before I blow too much of your time. It is a ladder braced instrument, which means that this top has bracing that goes across like a ladder. And that's a little bit different than what George Martin produced a little bit later. I'm not exactly sure what kind of bracing Martin was using from the get-go. He was an apprentice to the Venetian school before coming to the U.S., and I haven't looked into what the Venetian guitars were set up like. But this is at that same time Martin was producing guitars that look astoundingly like this, and the build quality on the Washburns and the Martins from that era are considered equal. These are these were really good guitars at the time and still today. So ladder braced, that means it's going to have a nice mid-rangey, boxy kind of sound. The X bracing that came along soon after in this time period that was developed to provide more strength to the top, and so that it could support steel strings. These guitars of this time period were all intended to have gut strings, which is from it's an intestine. I can't remember whether it's a pig intestine or what they make the gut strings out of, but it's gut. And so to work with these instruments, you should probably put nylon strings on them, and this guitar now is strung with nylon strings. I was talking about the ladder bracing and the X bracing. The X bracing came on board so that they could support steel strings, but people still put steel strings on these things as the era's passed, and Grandpa donated his guitar to the grandson. The grandson was a hippie maybe and wanted to play loud folky music with a steel string rasp to it and put steel strings on it. And so a lot of these guitars were destroyed by doing that. And this one suffered the consequences. I think if you use your imagination, you'll see a little bit of bellying back here and a little bit of tilt to the bridge plate here. And that devalues this guitar. It also has caused a little bit of a bellying warp here. Is the string tension that was when they had steel strings on this pulled very hard back here between these two. It tends to overstress the neck. The neck wasn't necessarily designed for supporting anything like that, and this bass certainly wasn't built for supporting anything like that. Part of what makes these such wonderful instruments is that the tops are feather light, super thin, super responsive. And the downside of that is they're not really built to handle steel strings. And so in the era when people were putting steel strings on these things, they got damaged. This guitar has suffered the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune since 1897. It's got evidence of cracks, and it's been repaired and cleated over the years. So it is definitely worn. But still, I mean, look at those inlays. Isn't that pretty? I really do like those inlays. And the nice, tasteful binding and herringbone, all of it's just very lovely. The wood, you can see, is nice, straight grain, Brazilian rosewood, from an era when you could get really good Brazilian rosewood. And those woods, the spruce top and the Brazilian rosewood back, that's exactly what you'll find on period era Martins. What's a little bit of a wild card on this that I really love the look of, it's a cypress neck. I don't know whether that's going to come through, but it's got a lovely reddish brown, sort of a honeyed color to it. It's got a nice light grain that is really evident through the varnish. And I enjoy that this was not, while in those years that it was suffering the indignities of being somebody's folk guitar. No slam on folk guitars, okay? I think you're great. But I don't see the telltale marks of the capo here at the second or third fret. So thank God for that. It does have a really sort of sharp, pronounced V on it. And that's a nice thing for providing structural rigidity, but not always the most comfortable thing in your hand. I kind of like it just because it's unusual, for me at least, not to the period. Lots of sort of V-shaped necks for that period. It is not a particularly big or chunky guitar. Well, clearly the body size, but I'm talking the neck here. Even though it's nylon string, it's not really a classical guitar neck that we think of as a classical guitar, not like a, I think those are the Torres or Ramirez. I think it's the Torres design that was the original fan braced, and what is it, 50 millimeter or more width up here, 2 inches for us in the States. And so I think the thing I'd like to, oh yeah, it's got a nice little appointment here on the back. I didn't point that out. So celluloid binding, then there's a wood strip, and then another piece of black celluloid, so it goes sort of a cream ivory colored celluloid, which was probably white, and is just aged to a beautiful color, and then the black, which looks a lot like purfling on a violin. I think a lot of this took inspiration from violin lutherie in general. I think I'll say they were equally inspiring each other over the years. And this goes back, guitars go back centuries, or versions of stringed instruments that were plucked go back centuries, and from all continents, really. Just a lovely history. Okay, nice back with a stripe down here that looks more like a wood inlay, and one that has worn. I'm beginning to think I see the Brazilian rosewood starting to come out underneath it here where it hits the body. But all in all, marvelous that it's still playing. And last month I did Music of the Spheres. And I think it'll be a really lovely, mellow fingerstyle guitar to have in the pool of guitars to play. And it may be one of the last guitars I get. If I'm dealing with this stuff, I think I've probably got, I've probably hit my limit on collecting for a while. But well, we'll see. Maybe things will heal up, and I'll be playing a lot and giving them all the attention they deserve. If you're going to have the guitars, you should be playing them. I'm not one of these guys that buys wall hangers. I buy them for a sound. I buy them for a story. So last bit about this, I bought this guitar and this guitar, both of them small bodies, but very, 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 very different, and from different time periods. This is from the 30s, and is an arch top, but I bought them both from a place called Vintage Blues Guitars, and it's an online resource, really. Again, I like to flag out people that are doing a nice job of curating this stuff, because half the fun in vintage instrument buying and using and collecting is to know a little bit of the story behind them. And so when they were advertising this thing on the web, they had this wonderful quote from a catalog, a Washburn catalog from 1899. So the model is model, this has got so many different names. It's the 1897 new style, it's the new model, and the actual model number is 123. But the Model 1 is the size. And it actually corresponds, I think, to a Model 1 size from Martin. I do think, just as in any era, major manufacturers compete ferociously for success in the marketplace. And I think Washburn was no different, and Martin was no different. These guys were keeping an eye on each other and trying to steal the market. Interestingly, in this time period, one of the main markets for guitars, especially guitars like this, were for women. Women played a lot of guitar, and I think that's just a nice bit of history. I wish it was more the case now. Marketing in guitars for so long has been aimed at guys like me, you know, and guys, and it was very guy-centric and very youth-centric. These guitars were marketed in quite a different way. So here I want to read some of the catalog entry for this thing. Number 1, standard size. This guitar is somewhat larger than the usual ladies' size, but of beautiful proportions and a very elegant model. It is the popular style. Is a great favorite as a lady's instrument. The tone, though rich and mellow, possesses much volume and is quite powerful enough for all home purposes. Isn't that kind of lovely? And I would agree with them that it is a beautiful proportions and a very elegant model. And I think that's what I really liked when I saw it. I've been a fan of that sort of small body proportion for a very, very long time. And didn't think I would own anything like that because they can be kind of expensive. But this was not so bad, and the reason was because of that bellying and the warping. So I can see that despite what I intended to do, I've talked for a very, very long time. I do it in my professional career as well, so this is no real change of behavior for me. All right, next month I will try and actually play a song. I can play little bits, and I'm sticking to songs on nylon stringed instruments for a while and see if that helps. And so if you've made it this far, tune in next month. It'll be a song. Anyway, bye-bye. Thanks for watching.